Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. Today's guest is Rennie Gabriel, and he's the author of Wealth on Any Income. So it's a little bit of a change of pace, but trust me, this is going to be great, especially if you're a business owner looking at asking the question, what's next for you? So Rennie's going to really talk about some of the things you could do today, even if what's next isn't for 5, 10, or 15 years. So Rennie is an absolute tough times to success story. And in his own words, we want to hear from Rennie today. So let's welcome him to the show. Well, welcome, Rennie, to the Revenue Throughput Podcast.
Thank you, Jose. Pleasure to be here.
Well, Rennie, it'd be really helpful for our audience just to get context if you just tell us a little bit about who do you serve and what do you do for them, and just to put it in perspective, and then we'll go from there.
I serve primarily business owners that could also be entrepreneurs, coaches, authors, corporate trainers, primarily people who are responsible for creating their own income, their own wealth, or their own problems.
Wow. And I love that term, responsible for creating their own income. I love that. That's a really good turn of phrase there, because it really does capture the essence, right, of it. Many of our listeners have grown their businesses. They have staff, they have payroll, they have all those things. And often when I interact with them, we're talking about the business, the strategy, the marketing, all of that. And I've often thought, I said, well, gee, there's a person in there, right? I try to get personal, but, it's not necessarily my specialty to tell them what to do after they've made the money from growing the business.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts maybe for somebody like that who's reached a level where, okay, I'm doing okay, I'm running a business and so on. What might be some pitfalls they should make sure to avoid? Because we know that even if things are good, if somebody was selling plexiglass in February 2020, life got very plentiful in March of 2020, but that won't always be the case, right? So what are some thoughts there, Rennie?
It's a perfect lead into the kinds of things that I want to talk about, which has to do with setting up some reserves. And, a lot of people say you always want to have reserves, your rainy day fund, whatever. But I look at it a little bit differently in that there's two aspects to it, not just one. And the one aspect that everyone's familiar with is, hey, business slows down, the economy changes, whatever. You want to have money to cover payroll, rainy day fund, big deal. What I like to focus on is that at some point, the owner is going to want to either choose to work or choose not to work. And that requires something a little bit more than just a rainy day fund. I'll give you a good example. Had a building contractor. He was earning a good living, about $300,000-$400,000 a year.
Okay.
And the money was coming in one hand, going out the other. He'd pay his vendors, pay the supplies, pay the employees. But, he's having a nice life. But if something went wrong, he'd be screwed. And so I said, tell you what, I'd like you to do. I'd like to be, you know what? I'm going to put you on the spot, Jose. Can I do that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Have you heard of the expression, pay yourself first?
I've heard that in some circles. Yeah.
Okay.
But so tell me about it.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you to explain it because 9 out of 10 people can't.
Wow. Well, if you're going to put me on the spot, I'm
putting you on the spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have seen owners run their business to hang on to every last employee. So they pay themselves last. They pay every other bill. And then in the end, sometimes it hides the fact that they might have been something more fundamental in the business they should have been aware of. But they were just, they were plugging the holes.
Yes.
And then they left themselves out they were not in the boat. They were plugging the holes in the boat, but they left themselves off the boat. Yep. So as I've always understood that, is make sure you're taking out of your business. I'll give you a real good example of this. I've seen businesses go through a real sharp rise in revenue, but they rise costs at the same time. Yes. And then the owner's not making any more money, but has twice the headaches and twice the obligations.
Yes, I've seen that too.
And I'm thinking, well, gee, if you get a business up to like $10 million or whatever the number is, depending on the kind of business you're in, you should be making some good bank out of that. It shouldn't be, well, I'm still waiting for that next day sometime where I'll be able to actually draw out more substantial income from my own business. Because at the bigger you get, the more leveraged you are, the more commitment you have. Payroll's now no longer $10,000 a month. Now it's $10,000 a day or whatever. It's real money, as they say. So so if you don't plan for you drawing out a proportionately greater salary from that business, it may never happen. You may never do it.
Right.
Hey, pardon the interruption. It'll just be a beat. We want to tell you about something that's really exciting, and it might be very exciting to you if you're the owner, CEO, leader of a B2B company, roughly with $2 to $20 million in revenue, and you feel a little bit stuck. You know what I mean? Sales are a little flat, maybe even declining, challenged. Margins are being squeezed. Sales cycles seem to be lengthening, and lead flow is uncertain. We've designed a program based on over a dozen years of us doing exactly this for many B2B companies. It's called the Competitive Edge Program, and you can learn more about it at valueprop.com/edge. Tells you all about the program. It's a 90-day program, really focused on helping you sharpen your value proposition, aligning your value delivery, making sure your marketing program is doing what it has to do if you're in B2B, which is generate opportunities, and make sure your sales process is tight so that you can convert those opportunities into sales. So with that note, let's get back to another exciting episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast.
Now, like I said, 9 out of 10 people can't explain it. So you can feel like you're in good company being one of the 9 out of 10. Okay. So the concept is 5,000 years old. The concept was written about very well in a book called The Richest Man in Babylon about 100 years ago. And the reason I'm bringing it up has to do with how ordinary people listen and how wealthy people or people with a wealthy mindset listen. So I'll explain how pay yourself first works. What it means is you're not the first one to get a payroll check, but whatever you are paying yourself with, you set aside some money to keep for the rest of your life that no one will ever get. And it will buy assets that will generate an income so you never have to work again if that's what you choose. That is how you create your passive income. And so, in the book, it talks about set aside 10%. So if you're making $100,000 a year, you're setting aside $10,000 a year. If you're making $3,000 a month, you're setting aside $300 a month that you will keep for the rest of your life. And the reason I bring that up is the contractor that I was alluding to, earning a good living, $400,000 a year, 300, whatever it was. I mean, this was quite a few years ago, so I don't remember the exact numbers, but I said, I tell you what, I want you to begin paying yourself first. He said, I can't do that. If I do that, I won't be able to pay the vendors. I won't be able to pay for all the supplies. I won't be able to pay the payroll staff. Complain. I said, tell you what, are you telling me that if you just took off 1% of your gross revenues as they came in and set it aside? So in other words, if someone gives you a $30,000 check, are you telling me you couldn't set aside $300? Well, no, I should be able to do that. Okay. We worked together 6 months. Here are the things that happened. He found out 1% was so easy to do. He kept increasing it. By the end of 6 months, he'd set aside $50,000 that was his to keep to do whatever kind of investments he wanted to make. That's number one. Number two, he was very coachable. Whatever I told him to do, he did. I said, buy flowers for your wife. He did. Put up this property. Yeah. Put up this property for sale. He would do it. Say, remodel this property, rent it out. He would do it. 6 months from the time we started, his net worth increased by $600,000. That's $100,000 a month increase. That's twice his annual income. So what I'm getting at is that paying yourself first is treating yourself like you deserve to own some of the money you're working for, and it doesn't go to anyone else. It doesn't go to a mortgage payment. It doesn't go to a car payment. It doesn't go to your insurance premiums. It doesn't go to groceries. It doesn't go to anything else but your future, where you buy assets that will generate an income. So if you choose not to work, you don't have to.
Well, Rennie, let me just jump on that a little bit. So first of all, that clarifies, and it's a different interpretation than my answer. So I was definitely in the 9 out of 10.
It's not an interpretation. That's how it works.
That's how it works. Oh no, and I appreciate the clarification on that. Yes, absolutely. So that's a different dimension than I was thinking about. My mind didn't go there exactly the way you described it.
Right.
So there are other advisors around, wealth and personal finance and so on.
Yeah.
Say like, make sure if you have debt, throw all your money into take care, get rid of your debt. No. Okay, so just comment on that, because that sounds like you're saying something a little different.
Oh, I'm saying something hugely different.
Hugely different.
That is
okay.
The worst, absolute worst advice any financial guru, CPA can give to a client. Okay, let me ask you this, Jose. It's kind of like another putting you on the spot kind of question.
Okay, I'm game.
Let's say whatever your income is, whatever your debt level is, I don't care, but let's say you focus on getting rid of all of your consumer debt, mortgage debt, auto loans. You pay off every single debt you have. I'm not talking about anything else. If you end up doing that and you are now completely debt-free, do you have financial freedom?
In that moment in time, not yet.
That's right. Why? What's missing?
Cash.
Yeah, like how do you buy the groceries?
Right.
How do you make repairs on your house? How do you make transportation costs? Yeah. What does that require?
Well, requires more income, more something.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So in other words, just because you're debt free doesn't mean you have an income unless you keep working. And what's the point? Okay, you're debt free, but you still have to work. What I want people to understand, if you want to have work as a choice, you need to have assets that generate an income if you don't want to work. I don't have to work. Haven't had to work for probably 15 years now. I work because I choose to support other people. I give away 100% of the profits from my working with other people, for my programs, for my books, to a charity. I don't need that money. I give it to charity. But I can choose to do that because I don't have to work for a living because of what we're talking about.
Well, and I know there are going to be many owners listening here saying, well, actually, Rennie, what I'm going to do is at some point when I decide not to work, I'm just going to sell my business. Mm-hmm. And that will give me what I need to retire or to do whatever I want to do at that point. I'll invest then. Mm-hmm. So just curious how you respond to that.
It's sort of like saying, when I win the lottery, I'm going to do whatever. Now, I'm not saying no one's business is profitable or can't be sold, but a lot of times too many people build their business where it's around them as the key person. Mm-hmm. And if they walk out, someone else, the business is not as valuable. That's number one. Number two, let's say that you had a string of nursing homes and COVID hits. Mm-hmm. How saleable is your business if that's when you want to sell it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough for you at that point.
Exactly. And there are too many things that could impact that kind of choice unless you diversify, unless you start setting aside money outside of your business as well. I owned a pension administration company. I was in the pension business, I don't know, let's see, well over 10 years. Okay. And what I noticed is my wealthiest clients had assets outside of their business. They weren't relying completely on their business. Yeah, it was a big part of their net worth, but it wasn't the only part of their net worth. And that's important.
And also the practical reality, having worked with owners for years, is that what you want to get for your business isn't necessarily what the market's going to give you for your business.
That's true too.
So you can have a vision of what you think that might look like. And as you pointed out with the nursing home example, or anything else that the world's changing, you don't know at the moment in time what it might be. It's really mark to market continuously, and it's very, very volatile. So what you're saying is as you pull money out or as you earn money,
Yes.
some of that money has to go into, and you suggested 1%, 2%, 10%. You might learn, I guess you could learn how to do it by trying one, then two, then three, and so on, like that contractor did.
That's right.
And when you said that, and you gave the example, if you got a $30,000 job, you couldn't pull $300 out, and he said, of course, because typically that $300 can go in a nice dinner,
Yeah.
right? A pair of sneakers these days, right? Certainly, there's a lot of ways you could burn through $300 without giving it much thought, and yet putting it aside the way you've described just makes a lot of just makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of again, owners or leaders, executives have to start thinking beyond just everything's tied up in that one thing, their business.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's, I hear the term balanced life or whatever. And yeah, that's it. In other words, there's a lot of people who focus everything on their business and their marriage falls apart. It's having a view of a whole complete life, not just a business life.
Okay. Now you also mentioned, Rennie, that when you worked with people who were very successful, like wealthy people that set aside investments and so on, you said they think about money differently.
Yes.
And so certainly a lot of business owners maybe have had attained some level of that same kind of success, but you're describing more of a person who sees themselves as an investor.
Not necessarily. No, I wouldn't. I mean, that's not what I feel.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's just that has to be a part of someone's total picture. That's all.
Okay. All right. So what else should be part of that total picture? And again, you've described, and I know you gave a great TED talk a little while ago, and you talked about how, your personal journey. So you learned a lot of these things the hard way, right? It wasn't given to you as a manual on when you graduated, high school or whatever. But so can you tell me just, for our listeners, just a little bit of that journey? Because I think it's very inspiring how you were, because some people right now, I mean, this last year and a half has been really tough for some business owners and just people in general. So where was the pivot point for you and what really opened your eyes to other possibilities?
I'd say the pivot point was in my 40s. What I recognized was that because I was a latchkey kid as a small child, coming home, not having parents there, being responsible for myself, I ended up developing an attitude because I was a child that no one's going to be responsible for me and I'm the one who has to do it all. Well, it doesn't really work to have the attitudes of a 5-year-old child running the body of a 40-year-old. Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah, just saying. So I had to start breaking up that conversation. And what I started to learn was how wealthy people began to operate. As an example, I say wealth creation, and it doesn't matter if it's wealth creation, business growth, personal relationships. It's a team sport, not a solo sport. I had success in a pension business because I had partners. I had a mediocre to failing business in the art gallery arena because I did it by myself. I could look at the history and say, what businesses did I have that did well? What businesses didn't do well? And I could say, well, the ones that did better, I had a team. The ones that didn't, I was on my own. As an example, in real estate investing, I had someone who's an experienced realtor and my wife, and the three of us went from a 3-unit property with the first $18,000 I had after my second divorce to a multi-million-dollar net worth in 8 years. And that's starting from broke at age 50. So it's that team approach, which is crucial. So anybody who's listening who thinks they have to do it by themselves, if they're an entrepreneur and they don't have anyone in their company who is, let's say they're the visionary, and they don't have someone who can execute on that vision, then they got to hire someone. Or they hire a business coach to have someone to bounce ideas off of, because it can be lonely if you're the only one running a business and it's not even effective.
Right. You literally have to be right all the time.
Yeah.
And of course, I've met that person who says yes, and I am. And I say, okay, good luck with that. but
Yeah.
a little humility goes a long way. Just to
Yeah.
know that you can't do it all by yourself. That's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
really good, Rennie.
And one of the things that I think separates people with an ordinary mindset versus those with a wealthy mindset is the approach. In other words, I asked you if you heard of the expression pay yourself first. You said yes. Yeah, most people would say yes. The ordinary mindset says, yeah, I've heard of that. I know what that is. That's not new to me. Whatever. A wealthy person asks questions when they hear familiar information, like, how would that apply to me? Or where would I put the money? Or when will I begin doing that? Or who could support me with that? That's a completely different approach than an ordinary mindset. The wealthy person asks questions, and those answers end up producing the results.
Wow. Well, that's really great, Rennie, and thank you for sharing. So I think some really sharp insights that I'm sure will be very helpful to many people listening to this. I also know, just getting to know you and seeing you in a variety of group settings and so on, that you have a real passion for charity, even to the fact that you said 100% of your profits donated to charity. Tell us just a little bit about the charities you support. Just want to listen a little bit to that and give you an opportunity to speak to that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that because that's really important to me. There's a lot of charities I support in terms of veterans, housing, homeless, and stuff like that. But the primary one that's gotten well over $100,000 so far is called Shelter to Soldier. They rescue dogs from environments where they could have been euthanized, and they train them as service animals for soldiers who've come back with PTSD or traumatic brain injuries that might have otherwise committed suicide. And the suicide rate among veterans is about 22 a day, or almost one an hour, but not one who's received a service dog has committed suicide. So this
Wow.
charity saves 2 lives at a time. So they get 100% of the profits from the work I do supporting other people to create wealth. And outside we support other causes as well.
Sure. Wow, Rennie, that's really exciting. And that is, I guess, dogs are man's best friend. So
Oh yeah.
that's a real thing there. Wow, fantastic. Well, Rennie, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for sharing. And if somebody listening wanted to know more about you, what you do, how to get in touch with you, where should they go?
Simple. The title of my book is Wealth on Any Income. Title of the website is Wealth on Any Income. If
Okay.
they go to the website and put /TEDx, so it's wealthonanyincome.com/TEDx, they'll be able to hear the TEDx talk you were talking about, where it talks about how we've been conditioned to believe it's better to be poor than wealthy. And the cure is a 9-step roadmap to complete financial choice with a 27-page explanation.
Fantastic. Wow. And that's available if they go to wealthonanyincome.com//TEDx.
Correct.
And they can access the talk and the resource.
Correct.
Thank you. That's very kind, Rennie, and we really appreciate it and appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Jose. It's my pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, thanks for listening to another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. If you like this episode and if you like the series, make sure you subscribe below. And also, if you liked it, please do review it. When people are looking for something exciting to listen to, especially the kind of content we're bringing, which is practical insights for B2B companies, this is a place and a free resource that they can take advantage of. Let them know about it with your review. So subscribe, review, enjoy. Thanks again.